Darin, wanted to keep the conversation kind of a bonus episode here for our online audience. I have a few questions that we didn't get to in the program I wanted to ask, but first, we're at the Triumph of Ag Expo. You've done a lot of farm shows in your day, given a lot of different talks, right?
I did. Back in the day, wintertime, it was basically nonstop, different farm shows, so on. Triumph of Ag was always a fun one to come to. It was kind of the end of the speaking season, and we always had great crowds. We filled the different rooms that we would be given. So many times we had to go searching for chairs, stealing chairs from other rooms just to fit the crowds. A great time, again, because we're just heading into spring, early meteorological spring, planting season's just around the corner. Everyone's always interested in what's going on. This year, absolutely the same thing. So much to talk about that it's always nice to come back to the Triumph of Ag.
Let me ask you this question. We didn't get to this in the program, but I was curious your thoughts on what's not being talked about in the markets right now that is important for our viewers to know.
What's not being talked about? I think what's not being talked about is how dramatically the supply and demand of so many markets have changed. And it's not just a one-year issue. It's not just a one administration issue. It's none of that. We have seen this over the course of a number of years put together. We've really ramped up demand for U.S. supplies here, getting back into the international trade game. And what the thing that stands out to me right now as we sit here in early March is the supply and demand situation for U.S. soybeans is probably record tight. And that's not getting a lot of air because USDA hasn't told people that, and people can't believe it unless USDA tells them. But the reality of the situation is the U.S. supply and demand situation for soybeans, as we came out of February, is tighter than it was in 2013-14, our record year for being tight. And we're going to have to navigate this situation somehow. China still needs soybeans. Now, they still have South America, but that production was cut by weather. So at some point, China's going to have to come back to the United States. What is the price of soybeans going to be when that happens? It's going to be fascinating to watch over the next few months.
That said, is soybeans the market you're most bullish about at this point?
If I had to be in a market right now, I would probably be in corn. But if there's one that I would hold out as most bullish right now fundamentally, it'd probably be soybeans, yes, because we are in an extremely tight situation. My calculation of stocks to use is at 0.2%, and I want folks to think about that. It's at 0.2%, and USDA is at 7%, 7.0%. So think about the misinformation there. We're at 0.2%. That's our stocks to use ratio right now. That's incredibly tight. It's record tight. The only way this ends is for some sort of demand destruction, and that's the only thing that has me a little bit fearful about soybeans is demand just going away. Can it happen? Probably not, but we'll have to see how it plays out.
What should we watch for possible demand destruction down the road?
Obviously it starts with basis and spreads. If we start to see national average basis collapse, that means the buyers aren't there. Buyers are going somewhere else, or they're just going to some other product. But the thing is, we're seeing this in not only in soybean meal, but we're seeing it in Malaysian palm oil and canola. It's the entire oilseed complex is in the same situation. So I don't know where the world's largest buyers are going to go to get their oil seeds if all of these different markets, all these different crops have the same sort of supply situation. That's what's going to make it fascinating. You can't just shut down demand completely, and there aren't a lot of replacement products out there. So that's, again, going to be fascinating to watch.
Again, on soybeans, you mentioned China. They stepped in recently with some more exports, right?
They did, and this is what's interesting is we saw the May-July future spread skyrocket over the early part of the week. And so this is telling us somebody's stepping in, somebody's doing some big-time buying. Okay, so they're doing that, they're buying those. Now, when that spread reacts that way and that inverse continues to strengthen, two possibilities. One, they're trying to buy some of the leftover tight supplies in the U.S., or two, it's a global situation and they're trying to source soybeans anywhere, even if those supplies are tight, saying Brazil, Argentina, wherever. In this case, it looks like they came to the U.S., sparked the market. Now when we try to buy those soybeans to actually move them, that's when we'll see it happen in the basis.
Let's talk about wheat. Of course, you've got some roots in Kansas. When we have this conversation, I'd like to mention that the most recent drought monitor shows that nearly 3/4 of the wheat belt is in some level of drought. Is this a time where we should be concerned about the U.S. production of wheat?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Again, we've got the situation going on in Ukraine. That's dramatically affecting the old crop market. We're getting very tight on old crop supplies. But then as we start looking towards new crop, our two largest crops here in the United States for wheat are hard red winter and hard red spring. And as you mentioned, the plains from the Canadian border down to southern Texas, it's dry. So we're heading into spring with no soil moisture and a wheat crop that could be hurt further down the road for that very reason. So we don't have old crop supplies. We're not going to replace it with much new crop production. All of a sudden, these new crop winter wheat markets starting to look a lot more bullish as well. And again, that Kansas City spread, those Kansas City spreads are inverted. And that tells us everything we need to know. The market's been concerned, are concerned, and will continue to be concerned for the foreseeable future.
You say you like to give advice as if your dad's sitting across the table from you asking a question. Well, if somebody's out there that has old crops sitting there still in the bin, you advising him it's time to move that as quickly as you can?
You know, let's look at corn. Corn's approaching $8. Soybeans are, $16, $70 on cash. Wheat is $10. I'm selling some. I mean, you have to sell some. And if you do, this is the easiest time in the world to market grain because you can't make a bad sale. Okay, yeah, maybe next week it's $2 higher. Sell a little bit more. That's going to be an equally good sale. So you can't make a bad sale at this time. Sell a little bit if it helps pay the bills, if it's profitable. If you can afford to hold back and not sell anything, that's fine too. But if you need to sell some, these are great times to be doing it.
Same advice for new crop?
Yeah, absolutely. Because again, there's nothing but unknowns out there. We don't know what acres are going to be. We don't know if fertilizer is going to be available. We have no idea how bullish, how tight these situations are going to be long term. So yeah, get a little bit on the books if you want to. I know a lot of folks who have been doing it doing some forward contracting to pay for input costs, then leaving the rest sit for now. I think that's a good strategy.
We could talk for an hour, Darin.
I know we could.
They just won't let us. Thank you for coming on to Market Journal this week. Appreciate it. Thanks for coming out to the Triumph of Ag Expo.
Absolutely. Thanks for the invitation, Bryce.